I hope that Ryan promised to come and fix the microphone, so I hope he comes. If not, I'll just. Oh, here he is. You know that Ryan is the most important person in the congregation. I'll let you know why. Because every time we pray, every Friday we pray and pray and pray, and the moment we stop praying, who comes up from under the bima? Ryan. That proves that we're praying for the arrival of Ryan every Friday. You notice almost without fail, we just say Shabbat Shalom when he comes up. So thank you for being here, Ryan. Oh, it's working. See? Told you he is a most. And can we have another one for the? All right. Thank you. Oh my God. You see? And can we make it a little louder, just a notch? Yeah. All right. That might make it easier for even a little more.
Can you do the?
I can do this one. Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So.
Thank you so much, Ryan. All right. So I'm happy to start this. Wait. Let's admit all the people in. There's a couple more people here. A couple more people here. We'll make it a gallery view so you can see the nice people who are joining from home. All right, so good morning, friends. It's great to be back after our winter break, or the first winter break, to Adult Ed, Temple Sinai, Whole of the Bagel. Kind of feels like tradition already. And it's great that you're all here. We have a very exciting semester at Hall of the Bagel. And it's really nice to see the speakers who have agreed to come and speak to us and teach us this semester. Hopefully it'll be a very exciting and inspiring intellectual and cultural journey, because that is the purpose of Hall of the Bagel, is to be an intellectual and cultural salon of a wide range and showing many perspectives in a pluralistic, community that we are. So I'll zoom into the first three, to introducing the first three sessions, because that's a series within a series, a mini series within a series. But really, aside from myself teaching 3 times, which is to begin and end, and then in the middle, I just said I had to put myself one more time because I love teaching about Purim. Purim is really one of the most important holidays there are. And I love teaching about it. So I kind of like, it's not called nepotism when you just bring yourself in, right? It's like, what is it called? Favoritism. So I stuck myself in the middle there again. And then we will be graced by the following. So next week, we're going to have Bishop Kara. Well, she has a much longer name. You can read it in the program. She is the bishop of the Episcopalian Church of all the western side of New York State. She is a very interesting and important person. And she'll be followed by Imam Ibrahim from the mosque, from the Islamic Center. The 3 of us will be giving this mini series about Jewish, Christian, and Muslim perspectives of the story of Exodus. I'll talk about that more in a minute. Then in the month of February, where's Elise? Good morning, Elise, our fearless president. Will be teaming together with Cantor Braun, our futuristic cantor, and they'll be leading us with a song with Shabbat Shira, because it's Shabbat Shira. This will be followed by Rabbi Dov Winston from Beth Shalom. We said if we could have an imam, and if we could have a priest from a Christian denomination, why not invite an Orthodox rabbi to teach us about the 10 Commandments? I called him up and said, Dov, you're Orthodox, you keep the 10 Commandments, come tell us about it, you know? He said, okay, I'll rise to the challenge. I'll come and teach some Torah to those Reform people. So he's going to come and teach us about the 10 Commandments. Hopefully by the end of the class, we'll know what they are and we'll be able to consider following them. And then getting closer to Purim, there'll be actually after Purim. Before Purim, I'll be teaching, but then Esther Brill, where is she? She's here. Good morning. Will teach us about Yiddish humor. So that'll be exciting. Lustige, right? Lustig, funny. Yeah, Yiddish, right? Yes. Then we'll have Dr. Nora Rubel, who teaches at the University of Rochester, but is also a congregant of ours, will teach us about Jewish food before Passover. She's an expert in Jewish food. Efrat Petel from the Federation, she started a new position at the Jewish Federation of Rochester, Greater Rochester, as there's a new department there called Israel Issues, and she's the head of that department. And me and her are working on a program for Yom Ha'atzmaut. Our very own Jeremy Sarchan will be teaching us on traditional media, social media, and anti-Semitism. So we have a lot of experts in this congregation and its surroundings. So we're very lucky to have all those experts coming. Hopefully it'll be a wonderful journey. Now about the mini-series within the series, but first I have to admit all those people. Admit the people on Zoom because they deserve to hear this too. So it's very interesting. We're very fortunate that the first 3 sessions of the second semester of All of the Bagel coincide with the time of the year in which we read in the Torah the story of the Exodus. So many of you may know that the story of Exodus is to be found in the book of Exodus, which is kind of why it got its name. In Hebrew, it's called Shmot. It's not Exodus, right? But the Latin name and how this book is known is Exodus because it tells us of the Exodus, not just in one parsha or 2. In fact, 4 parashot tell the story of the Exodus. It takes a while. It's not so easy to defeat Pharaoh and get out of Egypt, okay? And that is why we will be following that very famous story from the Jewish perspective, or actually I shouldn't say from the Jewish perspective, that would be inaccurate. There's no one Jewish perspective for anything, as you know, right? As we say, 3 Jews, 500 opinions, right? However, from a Jewish perspective, or for some Jewish perspective, hopefully one that will be refreshing to some of us, because maybe we all have some notion of what is the Jewish perspective of the Exodus, right? But today maybe we'll see some more options. And by the way, there's more texts here, so please, as not all of you have a text, especially the ones in the back. Oh, Shelley, thank you so much for doing that. So pass it around, or if there's not enough copies, share a few. It's never, it's either you make 2 copies and then there's not enough, or you make, it's always hard to guess when people will come. And then we have, because the story of the Exodus, because the story of the Exodus is not just a Jewish story, right? This I don't know if it's a piece of history or this myth or this epic tale of the Exodus that is in the Jewish Bible and is part of our history, as you know, made its way beyond the narrow boundaries of our people, right? Because the Christians read the Bible. Of course, they have a lot to say about the Exodus. And you'll see, hopefully, in 2 weeks' time from now, that that's not it. So it'll be also on the screen, so you'll be able to read. Okay, you'll be able to read it from the screen, hopefully. And even the people on Zoom, if we'll be able to share the screen, you'll see the text as well. And then, although in Islam, the holy book is a Quran, which is not the Bible, but a lot of it is based on the Bible. And of course, that Moses, or Nabi Musa alayhi salam, the prophet Moses, may he rest in peace, is one of the main prophets in Islam that preceded Muhammad. So they also have that story as part of their heritage, as part of their spiritual tradition, and hopefully we'll hear more about that from Imam Ibrahim when he comes to visit us. So that is hopefully will enrich us, but also will help us be in a conversation that is on the one hand Jewish and rooted in our own tradition, but also reaches out and remembers that the conversation that we're having with ourselves is in fact part of a broader one, that our sister religions and people who live next door to us, whether they're Christian or Muslim, these are three sister religions. Many of you have been to Rabbi Dr. Garraway's Shabbat, right? There we learn about the intricate relations between Judaism and Christianity. Fascinating. I learned a lot, right? So along these lines, possibly, we'll be able to see that through the different ways that these traditions talk about the Torah of Exodus, understand it. Okay? All right. So now we can narrow it a little bit to talking about the Jewish perspective, or a Jewish perspective of the Exodus. And hopefully it'll be something to think about. So, what's to say about it, right? We all know the story, and we all know that it's important to Jews because most of our holidays have to do with it, right? Which is a very famous holiday that has to do with the story of Exodus? Pesach, right? It's a very famous one. They even made a cartoon Disney thing out of it, right? The Prince of Egypt. It's a very well-known story, right? And in Pesach, what do they teach us, right? They try to kill us. We won. Let's eat, right? So how can I spend now an hour talking about that? Well, it's not so simple because you know what? They didn't always try to kill us, right? Let's face it. We lived among non-Jews as a minority for thousands of years, and hey, we're all here, which means that if they all tried to kill us, they weren't very successful, always, right? And then often it wasn't that they tried to kill us. So I question that they tried to kill us. Okay? Sometimes they did, but oftentimes they didn't, right? It was actually pretty nice, right? Living in all those exciting countries and coexisting with people. So sometimes, yes, sometimes no. Then we won. I also question that because, as you know, we didn't always win, right? About the let's eat, I'm not arguing. It's probably true. It's probably true. Let's eat is probably, an important thing no matter what. And you probably don't have to be a Jew to like eating, right? So we can agree about the let's eat. We can argue about which food. Okay, so Pesach is not as simple as it looks. Another point that will be a segue into our texts is that usually the story is told in a kind of how shall I say it? Kind of a very one-sided kind of way, right? It's usually, especially how we tell it to the kids. Who are the good guys in the story? We are. We are the good guys, right? We were enslaved, right? And we cried to God to save us, and then He did through the acts of His prophet Moses and his brother Aaron. And Miriam too, and all that. And who are the bad guys?
The Egyptians.
The Egyptians, right? Those evil Egyptians and that evil Pharaoh, they were enslaving us for many years, for generations, right? And we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. They lost, we won, right? We're the victims, they're the victimizers. Right, that's kind of how the story is told, at least in the shallow kind of like, not very, nuanced way. Okay. However, even in the traditional way that we tell the story, we know that it's a little bit more complicated than that. For example, there's one custom that I know of, at least one, while reading the Haggadah, which makes us suspect that it's not as one-sided. Does anyone know this thing when we dip our, yeah, go ahead, what is it?
When we dip for the 10 plagues, dip from our wine cup.
Right, you know, I don't know if it's in all the families, but I think most of the families, if you celebrate Passover, right, either you take something and you dip from the wine 10 drops of wine, right, to say that, oh, actually, we're also sorry for the Egyptians who died, by the way, right? That gives us a hint that some people thought, oh, but you know, the Egyptians were also human beings, and they suffered in this story, right? And then, however, do you have in English this saying called crocodile tears? Right? When I was visiting Florida last year, I saw many alligators, but I didn't see any tears. At any rate, what's that? Because they're alligators, right? Exactly. I always get to I'll tell you why. Because in Hebrew it's both tanim, and that is actually a word that they use when they translate it into English, also into serpent, and that'll be relevant to our talk today. So I'm giving some clues here. But how do we know that when we do that custom, it's not just shedding crocodile tears? In other words, yeah, those Egyptians, just to look good, we're gonna like do that. Are we really sorry for the Egyptians? We are. We can have a vote. Who's really sorry for the Egyptians? Very sorry. Who's like semi-sorry for the Egyptians? Who's happy that they drowned in the sea, right? Nobody's gonna admit that. It's politically, no, she is. You are. Wonderful. Somebody is brave enough to not be too politically incorrect and say, there's a bit of me that is happy that, you know, those Egyptians, those damn Egyptians, right? I should say that, we're being recorded. We love Egypt. Egypt, we love you. You're my neighbors, Egypt. I remember when I was a kid when your president came, Sadat, and there was peace. It was wonderful. I was 2 years old. I don't really remember it. Anyways, I remember afterwards. Anyways, but what I mean is that, yes, there's a part of us that is actually happy that we were survived. If you know the Midrash, you may have heard this, that after the people of Israel crossed the sea, they sang, right? Shirat Hayam. This is why we have Shabbat Shirah in February. They sang with Miriam leading, with actually it was the women of Israel. And then what happened in the heavens while the people of Israel were rejoicing? What's that? The angel resort, right? Because they, you know, and what did God tell them? Right. God told the angels, "Why are you rejoicing?" And they said, "Well, look, the people of Israel are rejoicing down there. We're happy." And God said, "Well, my creation, Maaseh Yadai, the creation of my hand, meaning the Egyptians, are drowning in the sea, and you're rejoicing here?" So God was criticizing the angels, and in a way was by proxy criticizing the people of Israel, because, hey, what's to rejoice? Okay, maybe the conflict was necessary. Maybe those Egyptians had to drown, but why rejoice? They're human beings, right? And this is a very right. This is a very nuanced way of Midrash to teach us the complexity of the moment, because it didn't tell the Israelites not to rejoice. Accepting that on one level, it's kind of, you know, you're a slave for 400 years. Your oppressor just drowned. You're free. It's very human, right? Where are you there, the brave one? Oh, right. It's very human. It's very yes, you, because it's very human to say, you know, we got rid of them. Yay, right? Who wouldn't as a first reaction? However, the rabbis teach us there's a higher level, right? The angelic level. Maybe it's not a human level, where you say, hey, but there's always two sides to the story, right? So that is why, and now we're going to start going into text, Jewish text, that kind of rather than looking at the story of the Exodus in kind of a very one-sided way, try to look at the story in a way that is a little more intricate, Okay, to say, hey, there's always two sides to each story, because hey, if we are all victims, and if the oppressor is always not us, and if the bad things that happen in the world are always somebody else's fault and not our own, why is there evil in the world? Right? Where are the oppressors if we're just the oppressed? Where are the victimizers if we're just the victim? Right? So people in our tradition for many years have noticed that, and we're looking at the story of the Exodus not only as a story of historical birth of our nation, where we were released from our external oppressors, but in ways that allow us to see that oppressed and oppressor, victim and victimizers, good and bad, good and evil, exist in the world, in every person, and also in us, which makes the story of the Exodus a little more, something that we can work with within ourselves, seeing that it's not just an external story, that we're always the good ones, the victims, etc. Okay, so let me try to share this. Just a second. I'll share the screen with the people on Zoom, so they'll have the text as well. Hopefully, it'll work better than it did in the Rochester last week. Can people in the Zoom see the text?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. Unfortunately, then we can't see you, but okay. So I'll actually take a little, there's 3 texts here. I believe we'll probably be able to get to 2 of them, and then some of it we'll be able to take home and study. Let's see how far we get. I'll start with the shortest text. It's actually not about, it's a short segue, but we'll get back to it. Anyone ever heard of a guy named Job? Yeah, not a very lucky guy, right? Job was a person who lived in the land of Uz, Eretz Uz, right? It's in English it's translated to Uz, U-Z, but you see in Israel it's Uz, and then it's actually the Wizard of Oz. When they looked for a name, Wizard of Oz, they called it Uz. So we all know that Eretz Uz is where Dorothy went with Toto. And it's kind of sad that it doesn't translate in English to OZ, which is also the initials of my name, but also, when we had that big homecoming in the summer, it was the Wizard of Oz theme, and I believe the Purim Spiel has something to do. How many people here are in the Purim Spiel? I don't know. I don't want to spoil it, but anyway, okay. So in the land of Uz, the land of Oz or Uz, there was Job, right? There was a man in the land of Uz, of Oz, whose name was Job, and that man was wholehearted and upright, and one that feared God and shunned evil, says the text. And then this really righteous man, a lot of bad things happened to him, right? Satan, it's the only place in the Jewish Bible, by the way, that Satan is ever mentioned, ever. Usually there's no Satan in Judaism, right? Someone told me once whether they heard someone say the Jews are of the devil or something like that, but actually it can't be, because we don't even believe in the devil, right? For the most part. At any rate, the only place where Satan is ever mentioned is in Oz, in Job, and it says there that this Job was completely righteous, right? He was not only was he was a whole, what did it say? He was wholehearted and upright and fear God and shunned evil. How can you be more righteous than that? You don't get more righteous than that, right? So why did all these bad things happen to him? He lost his health, he lost his family, he lost his wealth, he had all these maladies, right? And this is basically the philosophical question behind the book of Job, which is not the topic of our lecture. It's a little segue. You'll see in a second why. Right? Why do bad things happen to good people? That is basically the deep philosophical question. That's why the book of Job was written. It's a whole other lecture. We can have that lecture another time. Okay? But something to notice, one possible answer, it's not the answer, it's not the only answer, but a possible answer to what happened to Job. The Kabbalists, they talk about the end of the verse. He shunned evil. Sar mira in Hebrew. He was sar mira. He shunned evil. He shunned evil. And the Kabbalists say bad things happened to Job because he was a kind of righteous person who does not embrace his evil side, his own evil side. Not that he shunned evil in the sense that he did not do evil, but that he refused to see that in his own self there were shadows. See, he was denying. He shunned evil, not in the sense that we think, that he just didn't know evil, but in the sense that he said, evil is not about me. It's about other people. I'm not that. So the Kabbalists say, no, every person, no matter how righteous they are, there's always something about you we all have a dark side, right? Because maybe we're not aware of all that who we are. Maybe we are not seeing our blind spots. Maybe we, something happened to us when we were children, and et cetera, right? And so basically they said, he attracted Satan. If Satan, for the sake of the story, Satan exists. He attracted the bad things that happened to him because he would not deal with his issues. He would not go to therapy, in other words, right? He would say, no, I'm wholehearted, and I'm upright, and I fear God, and I shun evil. It's not about me. And then because he did not accept, embrace, investigate, explore, deal with his evil side, bad things happened to him. You see, that is already a more complex understanding that doesn't say, we're the good ones, they're the bad ones. Everything bad that happens is because of them. Right? That is already an interpretation that is willing to say, I have some responsibility over some of the evil that's in the world is probably because I am not resolved 100%. Now, who is resolved 100%? In a similar teaching, somewhere in the book of Zohar, where it says that the word, you see, that's just because I'm going to, okay, so I was distracted. So the word in Hebrew for righteous is, who knows? What's that? Tzaddik, right? The righteousness is tzedek, like tikkun olam, tzedek tirdof, justice you shall pursue. But who is the person who's the righteous one? What's that? Tzaddik, like in the song, tzaddik katama rifrach, right? So we pray that on Saturday mornings. So the tzaddik is a righteous person. Now, which letter is tzaddik? So tzaddik is which letter is that word tzaddik? There's a letter tzaddik. Looks like this. So the Kabbalists say, do you know about gematria, the numeric value of letters? So aleph is 1, right? 2 is bet. What is yud? Yud is 10. What is tzaddik? Who knows? What is tzaddik? Keep calculating. What's that? No, just the letter tzaddik. What is the numeric value? People are like with their hands and their toes trying to, what? No, tzaddik. No, more. It's not 20, no. Okay, so kaf is 20, lamed 30, mem 40, nun 50, samech 60, ayin 70, pei 80, tzadi is 90. Kuf is 100, and that's actually very important. Why? Because the Kabbalists say you can only be righteous at most 90% of the time. All right? There's no 100%. Nobody should, the ideal is to be only 90%. So in other words, you don't want an A plus, you want a B minus. All right, or no, not B. B plus is fine. 90, okay? A minus. A minus. If you're a perfectionist, you got to have an A there, right? Because they taught you in high school, you got to get an A. Don't be A plus, be A minus. If you think that you can be righteous 100% of the time, you can't, because the letter tzadi, which is the word righteous, is only 90. In other words, give 10% to your sins. Give 10% for your vices, if you want a more nuanced word. Don't try to be too much, because you'll fail like Job. This is that tradition. That's what it says. See what I mean? So we're not looking for perfect people. We're not perfect people. And there is at least 10%. Most of us, I would say, maybe it's like 12%, 14%, I don't know, right? That isn't righteous like Job. All right? Now, the Kabbalists in that midrash, when they teach about Job, they say, you know what? You should know that the story of Job happened in the land of Uz exactly at the same time in history, when guess which other story happened? In Egypt, exactly. The Exodus. And why they're saying that? The story of Job is it's probably not even a true story. I mean, there may have been a Job, but it's a fairy tale. How about the Exodus? Was it a true story? Of course it was. But we don't know that, right? For sure, scientifically. All we know about the story of Exodus is that it's in the Bible. We have no external proof that the story of Exodus actually happened, or that it happened in that way that it's told, right? So these two fairy tales are not, and the rabbis who taught that, they didn't care about, historical accuracy anyways. By them saying that these two stories happened at the same time, they meant to say, there's an internal connection between them. Both stories talk about good and evil, right? In the story of Exodus, goodness prevails, liberty prevails. In the story of Job, it's actually the other way around. But they wanted to tell us there is a connection between the two. Because they wanted to say the story of Exodus, when you read it, you should read it a little bit like the story of Job. Don't look at it, it's a key to understand Exodus in a more nuanced way. Don't think of it just as a historical thing. We're the good guys, they're the bad guys. They try to kill us, let's eat. Look at it also in a more spiritual or psychological or intricate ways, because there's more to gain from it. Right? So when we teach our children the story of Exodus, and Pesach, for the most part, is basically a show that we put out for the next generation, right? The main mitzvah, the main commandment in Pesach is Vehigata levincha. Tell your children. Teach them about liberty. Teach them about the story. When you teach the story, you teach it in a certain level. But as we get older, right, we can learn it in another level, and yet another deeper level, etc. So that will be a way to go to the main text that I wanted to share with you today, which is from the book of Zohar, the main mystical text of Jewish tradition. I don't even know what the word mystical means exactly. They say Kabbalah is mysticism. I'm not sure that it's mysticism. It's just a very cool midrash, okay? That is different and radical in many ways. And when they talk about that story, when they interpret Parashat Bo, which is the third parasha of Exodus, just before, many of the plagues already happened. 3 of them haven't yet. We still have the worst ones are yet to come. It's like the darkest time of the battle between Pharaoh and Moses. It's just like in the movies when you think that it's like the low point, that, oh my God, we're never going to make it. It's like, 75% down the movie before the grand finale when it turns, right? It looks when the antagonist is like, whoa, right? Like laughing at the top of the tower, and there's thunders and everything is dark, and that's where we are at the Exodus story. when the Kabbalists introduced the idea of the great serpent. Now, in order to understand the serpent and its connection to Egypt, we have to go back to Florida and to the idea that serpent and crocodile and alligator in Hebrew, or at least in ancient Hebrew, would always be tanin, right? Which is why Israelis never know what's an alligator and what's a crocodile, because it's both tanin, whether or not they have tears.
In English, it's usually snake.
Well, so serpent would be snake, but here it's actually a mythological, think about it as a mythological monster who lives in the water. But it's not Kabbalah, it comes from Ezekiel. Okay? When Ezekiel gives a prophecy about Pharaoh of his time, much later, he says, and it's in the text, in the third paragraph, you skim and scan through it, right? Ezekiel says, behold, I imagine this is how Ezekiel spoke, like very enthusiastic. He was Ezekiel, right? Behold, I am against you, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, the great serpent that lies in the midst of his river. Okay? And so basically, according to Ezekiel, who is the serpent? Who is the alligator that lives in the water? Pharaoh. Ooh, that's interesting, right? That's a metaphor for Pharaoh as the serpent, or in the Nile, do they have crocodiles or alligators? Crocodiles. We have an expert zoologist here. I didn't know. I thought you had a different profession here. So in the Nile there are crocodiles, right? These big, scary animals. It's kind of an interesting metaphor for Pharaoh, right? He's the serpent. He's the crocodile who lives within the river Nile. And the continuation of the verse I did not bring here before you, but it goes along the lines, why is he thinking? Why is he that? Because this crocodile, whose Pharaoh says, this is my Nile, this is my river, and I made it. I'm the king of the world, says the crocodile, alligator, serpent, Pharaoh. Look, I'm in this huge, amazing river. Ye'o. The Nile in Hebrew is Ye'o, so it also, like my name, is the river of light, right? It's important to understand the metaphor. He's in this river, if you wish. He's in the river of light, so he's in the good. He's in the good. He's in the good, in the bliss. Very fertile land. There's a river. There's water. There's light. And he's the king of the world. It is my river, and I made it. Right? And then God is going to take this serpent from the river and throw him in the desert. And that's how he's going to overcome him, says Ezekiel. It's very violent prophecy, but very, very powerful also, right? Because that's the geography of Egypt. Either you're by the Nile and it's fertile and you can prosper, right? Or you go 10 miles in each direction and it's complete desert. You think you're so strong, but you're not. Right? The power by Ezekiel, that's Ezekiel's metaphor. By the power of God, that mighty king who thinks that he made the Nile, and he's, the powerful one, will be thrown and will not be victorious. Okay? You can kind of think about how that might relate to us, to each and every one of us, right? It's when you become too ungrateful, when one thinks, it's all about me, I'm so strong, I deserve everything, I made it, it's all me. It's not my friends, it's not my parents, it's not my community, it's not my, us. It's me, right? Your ego goes high, and sometimes that's when you crash, right? So you can think about it in this way as well. So now to the Kabbalistic text. The zoologist has a comment.
Question.
Yeah.
Is it the same serpent as in the garden?
Well, quite possibly so. It doesn't say so explicitly, but when they choose in the Zohar to think of this crocodile or alligator as a serpent, one might think that it is, because when the Kabbalists now, what you'll see in our little text here, which is the beginning of a very, very long and intricate text in the Zohar that goes on for pages and pages, they tell a big, complicated myth about the great serpent. And it's very, very possible, although I don't think that they say it explicitly, that it could be alluded to that serpent from the Garden of Eden, because that also has to do with good and evil, right? There was good and evil, but in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve were not aware of evil, right? But then they were given choice, and with that came good and evil, and the messenger of bad news, kind of, was the serpent, right? So that's a good comment. Thank you, Mr. Zoologist, an expert of, earthly and celestial beasts. I think you're in the wrong profession, David, really. All right, so.
Is this a freshwater or saltwater serpent?
Well, the Nile, right? The River Nile is sweet water, as far as I know. Right. So there you go. So here we go. Let's try to read. Let's try to read the text. So Rabbi Shimon said, this is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who, according to the book of Zohar, is the main teacher who wrote the Zohar. In a little segue, I will say that it is not really Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai who wrote this text. We spoke about this in a number of other occasions. It's a pseudonym. Okay, it's somebody else in the Middle Ages writing in the name of Rabbi Shimon. But never mind now. Let's, for the sake of the story, let's just call it Rabbi Shimon. Okay, Rabbi Shimon said, after they have a really long discussion, much longer than the one we've had so far, about a lot of other things, when they talk about Job and about Egypt and good and evil and all sorts of things, in the middle of that really long discussion, Rabbi Shimon tells his students, now is the time to reveal secrets that connect above and below. Very dramatic. Right? Until now, we weren't talking about secrets that reveal the connection between above and below. Right? We were just talking. But now, it's time to reveal secrets that connect above and below. In other words, these are very profound secrets that not only, tell us a little thing, they tell us secrets that connect the human realm and the divine realm. It's a very profound secret that Rabbi Shimon wants to teach us. What is written in Parashat Bo? Come to Pharaoh. Moses tells to God, God tells Moses in the Bible more than once. Actually, he says this to Moses also in Parashat Va'era, Parasha previously. He tells a number of times to Moses, come to Pharaoh and tell him. What does he tell him? Moses was in Egypt land, let my people go. Right? But he has to go to him many times because he doesn't want to release the people, right? Let my, come on, Moses, way down Egypt land, hello, Pharaoh, let my people go, right? So I know, it's amazing, an amazing song that proves that this story is not just, in a Jewish mythology and culture, right? Everybody sings about that. So Rabbi Shimon notices, and he's not the only one who notices it. Rashi notices. Many commentators questioned why God asks Moses, come to Pharaoh, bo el paro. Shouldn't he have said, go to Pharaoh? It makes more sense to say here, Pharaoh's over there. Go to Pharaoh and tell him, let my people go. But no, the text says, bo el paro. Come to Pharaoh. Why is that? So why come? Because the Holy One, blessed be He, introduced him, that's Moses, to inner chambers, one after another, to a formidable great serpent from which many rungs descend. And what is that? That is the secret of the great serpent. All right? So the Zohar tends to be a book that speaks in symbolism and myths. But what is Rabbi Shimon saying here? Why is that a great secret? And it is actually, and this is not Eric. What are you doing there?
Are you asking where the Pharaoh?
The great chambers.
The great chambers.
Right. So it's all in Eric's head. Right? So everybody, and I hope is understanding this along the line that Eric is, more or less, right? That this is a big radical teaching, and this text has been written not recently, not in the 20th century, not in the 19th century, not in the era of psychology and Freud and all those people who came, right? It's even written before Immanuel Kant, the philosopher who told us that it's all in the head, right? This is medieval text written almost 1,000 years ago, maybe a little less, right? When basically Shimon Bar Yochai in the Zohar changes the direction of the story completely. It's a radical teaching by any means, right? He's not saying, he's saying God didn't tell Moses, go to Pharaoh. He told him, come to Pharaoh, because in fact, where is that Pharaoh? Inside Moses, not just inside Eric or Rabbi Zohar, inside Moses. It was in fact an internal conflict. It's, by the way, it's very Walt Disney or what's the name of the other, Marvel, right? Because it's always, right, in all those Marvel, it's the same. All the Marvel movies it's the same formula, right? There's a bad guy, there's a good guy. Sometimes there's a few of them. In order to achieve victory against that bad guy, right? The hero or heroine or whatever, they have to go through some kind of internal and understand something about them. And then when they figure themselves out, only then they can go and then comes that last episode with all the fighting, right? And they win. So the dramatic music. So this is the radical teaching that is here in the book of Zohar, right? That basically explains that, in fact, it's not a Pharaoh outside of Moses, it's a Pharaoh inside Moses. He took him chamber into chamber into chamber. You can imagine Eric's head with many chambers, right? One inside another, but not just Eric, of course. Sorry, right? So basically saying you go deeper and deeper and deeper. So it was actually like a psychological diving into one's own psyche. That is the kind of process that is actually Exodus, liberation, according to this text, ancient Jewish text. So when he went to the deepest, to the innermost and the deepest chamber within himself, what did he see? A great serpent. All right, there was a great serpent there, and you can all close your eyes and go chamber into chamber into chamber, right? And then he found a great serpent, right? Kind of a bad trip, right? Uh-oh. You know? So I don't know how many of you were living and thriving in the 70s, right? When those things were still legal. I don't know. Right? So probably more than one person here. Right? So he's going deep inside, and he's Moses, and he's seeing that within him there is this great serpent. How can he liberate the Israelites out of Egypt if he looks inside, and what does he see inside? He is Egypt. He is Pharaoh. He is the oppressor. By the way, it's very becoming of Moses, because where did Moses grow up? In Egypt, in the palace. All those movies, right? They basically built on that ancient reading, right? Moses is actually half and half. He's hybrid. In fact, many readings of the story of the Exodus teach that the Israelites and the Egyptians were not just distinct groups in Egypt. The Jews and the Hebrews, they weren't Jews, the Hebrews in Egypt were highly assimilated in Egypt. There probably weren't the only groups that were enslaved there. In fact, who was the first person who enslaved the Egyptians to Pharaoh? Who was that first person who thought about that? Joseph. So it's the Hebrews who actually enslaved the Egyptians, right? We think it's all about us. There are probably like 30 other nations who came to Egypt, right? Just like there's, 300 nations who come to the United States and become, part of the Uncle Sam economy, right? The land of the free, home of the brave, right? People were coming to, people are nodding their heads. It's not exactly the same thing. America is not Egypt. It's not. Hopefully we've evolved a little bit, right? But, working for the man, but I never, right? So, all right. Okay. So that is when it gets kind of spooky. We're Moses, but we're also Pharaoh. What's up? All right. Okay. So let's read to the next paragraph. Let's go on. And Moses was afraid of the great serpent and would only approach the rivers and its rungs, but I was afraid of the serpent, it should say, and did not approach it, because he understood that this serpent is rooted in higher sources. Oops. You see, so Moses goes rung after rung after rung, and I forgot to say something important. In Kabbalah, usually when we talk about rungs, what do we talk about? The 10 Sefirot. I don't know if anyone here ever saw the tree of life with the circles and the different colors. These are different emanations of God. And usually when they talk about rivers and lights and rungs and levels, they talk about different ways by which the divine is revealed and shines through and pours through into the world. But here, they kind of make out what they're actually doing, and they'll be doing that later on in the text, whereas you have the rungs of divinity, the tree of life, parallel to that, like a shadow, there is the rungs of the great serpent. See? So if you have the tree of life, you have the tree of death or evil or darkness, right? There's to each and every shining sephirat, shining divine emanation of God, an attribute of God, there would be a shadow. Right? Every light casts a shadow, right? So Moses, rather than going and seeing the divine rivers, and the rungs of divinity, everywhere he goes deep inside, what does he see? He sees the shadow. He sees the serpent, and he goes all the way to the serpent, and he's able to withstand it. But one thing he's not able to withstand, right? He's not able to withstand the serpent itself. Why? Because when he approaches it, he realizes what? What about the serpent? Why can't he deal with the serpent itself? It says so at the end of the paragraph. It's rooted in higher sources. Maybe it should have been translated to the highest sources, the highest source. Why can't he overcome the serpent? It's part of him. What is the highest source usually in our tradition? God. Right? He wants to overcome the fundamental evil or the fundamental serpent, whatever it is within him, and he can't, because he realizes that serpent is so mighty because it actually comes from God. Speaking of a bad trip, right? You go and you see that the serpent is actually, that these two sides, right? The emanation of goodness and righteousness and light and enlightenment, and the shadow, when he comes to the core of it, when he comes to the butt of it, what does he realize? That they're all connected, right? And so he can't overcome it because it's supported by the supreme source. All right? In some ways, it's comforting. Why is it comforting? Yeah?
We need to just talk to you for a second.
Yeah? Oh, sorry, what happened?
Out there.
Oh,
Just come.
I'm
Just one
sorry.
second, folks.
I'm sorry. Hopefully I'll be back. Someone keep.
Discuss among
Yeah,
ourselves.
discuss among yourselves. Look for your source.
Coffee break. Coffee's in the corner.
Oh. No. Okay. All right. So it's everything's okay. I had to be notified of something, but everything's okay. For the sake of this class, everything's okay. However, we see that in reality, there's good and evil always. Good and evil.
Because Moses isn't allowed into Israel after the wandering in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
Kabbalah links that to the inability of him to vanquish the serpent? Or
In a sense, yes. In a sense, yes, because in our tradition, in Kabbalah, Judaism in general, there are no perfect people. And there's this problem with Moses, because Moses, in our tradition, is the person who went, who's been to the highest, he's the highest, he's the human being who's evolved the most, according to Jewish tradition. And if you're a philosopher, you'd say, oh, he was the greatest philosopher. And if you're a Kabbalist, you'll say he's the best Kabbalist. If you're everything else, you'll say he was the best this and that, because according to all traditions in Judaism, Moses is the paradigm, right? He's the for the person who's been involved the most. But having said that, in Jewish tradition, it goes to great detail to make sure that Moses is not perfect. So Moses will have a serpent, and Moses will not enter, and Moses will commit one sin and will not enter the promised land. And it'll be made clear very much that Moses also has shadows, which he, by the way, if you read the story, he had many, like all the other heroes in the Bible, in the Jewish Bible. We're not a culture that says, we're perfect, enlightened people. We accept and embrace the fact that we have shadows, as we're seeing here. And it also has to do with the fact, it resonates with the fact that he will not enter the promised land. Okay? Yes, Mr. Zoologist?
At the beginning of the talk, we talked about how God was upset that the angels celebrated the death of the Egyptians. So maybe this experience that Moses had was to reinforce with him the humanity of the Egyptians by seeing that he had a dark side. And
Yeah.
that side, and so did they.
Absolutely.
Before God's going to torture and kill all the Egyptians, he wants Moses to understand it by virtue of Moses, the Jewish people.
Right. So I agree with you, David, and I think that you're right. I think that these mythologies are not brought just for entertainment or for drama, right? These mythologies are there to teach us something. Right, and they're here to teach us something about not just what happened or what happened in the Middle Ages. They're here to teach us. I'll also bring those stories here because I think they're relevant to us today. In order to really get liberated, to evolve, right? Moses had to see that, in a sense, the Egyptians are just like him, and he right, and the Israelites and the Egyptians are kind of the same. Right? As long as we keep our narrative as we're good, they're bad, we're right, they're wrong. Think about any adversary that you're dealing with, either as an individual, as a part of a group that you belong to. If it's in American politics or world politics, right, or any kind of conflict that we're in, right? As long as each side, right, just holds to their narrative, and say, they're the serpent, they're the crocodile, they're the monster, I'm the Nile, I'm the light, I'm the river, right? It's very hard to evolve like that, right? And these kind of teachings say, if you want to evolve as human beings, you better embrace and understand that the real combat of every person is with the serpent within. Yeah.
I'm reading the next to last paragraph.
Uh-oh.
It sounds like God also has a serpent within him.
So we're going to get exactly. So it's not, so to make things more complicated, well, let's read. Mhm.
Sorry.
Yeah. There's always that person who reads it, right? Which is actually good because, when the teacher kind of gets in loops, like, get on to the next paragraph already. So we're running out of time here, right? So, yeah, we're almost out of time. What's this? When the Holy One, blessed be He, saw that Moses was afraid and other appointed messengers above could not approach it, the blessed Holy One said, behold, I am against you, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, the great serpent that lies in the midst of his rivers, Ezekiel 29. The Holy One, blessed be He, needed to engage in battle with the great serpent by himself and not by proxy, as it says, I am the Lord, Ani Adonai. This was explained in the secret of wisdom that the great serpent lying in the midst of his river refers to those champions of judgment who know the secret of their master. So what can we make of these last two paragraphs? And then we'll open it for questions and not the little time that we have, the 50 minutes that we have left. So one is that indeed, like you're saying, that this drama that exists of good and evil in the world, the realization that Moses had was that these two sides, the light and the shadow, are not just in human beings and not just in the world. In fact, they're in the source itself. In other words, if you think that the divine is only good or only can relate to the good things that are in the world, no, think deeper, because everything comes from God. If we truly believe in monotheism, right? In monotheism, what is the main principle of monotheism? One God, one source. Everything is from God. It's very difficult to understand what Moses understood here. That the serpent, whether external, internal, mythical, psychological, whatever it is, that it cannot be defied in the way maybe that is defied in Walt Disney or those kind of movies, is because actually evil or darkness or the shadow area, the shadow zone, okay, the twilight zone, also has a divine source, right? It's kind of like it actually breaks the illusion of like the childish way of looking at the world, seeing that somehow it is all part of reality. Hard to accept, but true. There's no way out of it. If we're aspiring to a world that is only righteousness and only light and never problems and everybody will never harm anyone, and it basically achieved saying here in the third paragraph that it's quite impossible to reach it because if you want light, there'll be shadow. And to the last paragraph, because we could have like rushing through just to get to the last paragraph. Who are the champions of judgment who know the secrets of their master, in your opinion? Anyone but the theologist? Who might be the champions of judgment who know the secrets of their master? Who's writing these texts? The Kabbalists. Is that what you're going to say?
No, I'd like to say it's a warning from God not to believe those who think they know the secrets.
I would say that both answers are correct. I think that the Kabbalists here are trying to tell us that they're trying to be very aware of themselves. In other words, that is something that is revealed in this text, but also in other similar texts of this tradition. More than or no less than the Kabbalists are interested in the emanations of light. are they interested in the side of judgment, of din, that is the shadows? Because if you want to work on yourself and evolve and become a better person, a more aware person, you will be more interested in your own shadows than in your own lights, or no less. See what I mean? So basically, they're proclaiming themselves to be those who know the secrets of their master, in the way saying it's all full of shadows and you can never know enough, and nobody is ever enlightened enough, right? No, if you come to the place where oh, I'm wonderful, learn from me. No, you're just a person, right? You're just right. And these are kind of, and that is kind of like the point of this text. So that actually what the Kabbalists are revealing about themselves, so that they're the people who work on the dark side of themselves, and who are aware that they also have that, a little bit like, I think it's called introspective psychology or something like that, or what is it called? When the therapist also is aware that he or she is affected by it's what all therapists know nowadays. What's that? The transfer, but there's another term that I'm looking for. Anyway, it's that notion that, what's that? Countertransference, and there's even another, yes, with all those things, there's another term that escapes me, but basically that we know that it's not like we think that this person is all resolved, right? And that person is like, I don't know, a person with problems, right? And anybody of us, whether we're psychiatrists or doctors or rabbis or teachers or parents or whatever it is, right? That illusion of that person is in the know and that person has all the light and that person in the shadow, right, is not exactly like that. We all know that we're all affected and that we all have our shadows. And in order to evolve, that is what we need to embrace. So let's take time for a few comments. Maybe we can pass the mic. And I'm deliberately not starting from David's side. Just so you know, David, I got my eyes on you. All right, so let's open the conversation.
Okay, so that question of why God lets bad things happen to good people is obviated by this whole discussion, because the bad things, the evil is within God. So we should not, that's a bogus question and a bogus argument. Is that what this is saying?
I'm not sure, but I understand your question.
Because evil is within God. Or bad things are within God, that's what this says?
Well, we don't maybe know what's in God, but as we approach the divine, we realize that that is also from God. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so to me then, you can't ask that question, how did God let the Holocaust happen?
Mhm.
Because that darkness is just the divine and human condition.
Yeah, you can still ask the question, and then people ask me that question. I often answer that God did not do the Holocaust; human beings did. Right? So it's basically not God who made. But then why would God create a world in which atrocities can happen? And I think that the answer that comes from this kind of tradition is look inside and get the answer. See that you have that potential. Every person, every nation, right, has the potential to have atrocities done, no less that they have the potential of having atrocities done to them, right? So basically that kind of tradition doesn't tell us, never mind that they're evil. No, of course. Look inside, embellish yourself, find those places within you. If everybody did that work, there may be less atrocities.
Can I ask a question
Uh,
the same way she is?
Yeah, what's that? Okay, there's a good practical. Anyone on Zoom has questions?
No.
Someone on Zoom said no, we don't have questions. But do they speak for all the? Do they speak for all the people on Zoom? Do they represent them? We don't know that, right?
I have one, and I'm not sure.
Speak more to the mic.
If Moses
was our highest, the most enlightened. When he's looking at, like, when the Kabbalists look at him, the darkness, is that like Malkuth, and then the good stuff is Kether, or?
No, it's all throughout. It's all throughout.
So there's layers, all those branches are all.
Each and every, so Lori is already asking questions about the different emanations of Kabbalah, but to make a simple answer, each divine emanation has its shadow. And according to, for example, Lurianic Kabbalah, we don't live in a world of divine emanations. We live in the world of broken, shattered divine emanations. Okay, so if you ever heard of the myth of the broken vessels, it's a whole other lecture. In Lurianic Kabbalah, we live in a world where everything shattered. God tried to create a world, but it went wrong somehow. Not because it was some devil, but because it just couldn't. Never mind why. It's a whole other lecture. But we live in, according to that myth, we live in a world of shattered, broken vessels, and we are trying to fix it. That is, by the way, where Tikkun Olam comes from. Ever heard of this Jewish reform thing, Tikkun Olam? It actually comes from Kabbalah, where they say, we have to help the divine fix the world, repair the world from the broken vessel. Okay, let's pass the mic this way. If we're lucky, it'll get all the way to David. If not, anyone else here? Anyone here? Nobody here? David, no. Okay. But yeah. All right. Mm-hmm.
I was thinking along a similar line to your first question, but what I was thinking is this a secret? Because God told us from the beginning that he was a jealous God, and that we have very good reason to fear him, and he threatens us with many, many terrible things.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the funny thing about secrets is they're not secrets at all until you make them. Like in the end, what's the secret, right? My kids always used to say, when you were ordained to be a rabbi and they whisper something in your ear, what did they whisper in your ear? Right? So the truth, I can't tell you what it is, but the truth is that if you knew what it is, you'd say, oh, yeah, that, So it's like the secrets aren't secrets, right? But, God evolves throughout the Bible and but by the time we're talking about Kabbalistic literature in the Middle Ages, God is already a more sublime kind of like, evolved creature, right? And I think they're asking about that kind of God, but that God is full of wrath is actually all over the Bible, right? And if I may steal another moment to answer you, also mindful we have about 2 more minutes, is that some people say, some scholars say that a lot of what Kabbalah is a reaction to philosophy. So they're reading Maimonides, who's saying, God is this abstract thing, and they're saying, no, God is actually very visceral. It's actually full of wrath. It's full of emotion. Don't tell us the divine is this abstract philosophical God. It's actually a mythical, angry or happy or loving God, right? And you could also read the story in this way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. David.
Oh, there's someone online.
Oh, someone. Who is it? Yeah, I don't know. I can't. Oh, what a surprise. Her wants to speak. Yes.
I have a question for you, Rabbi. Are we to take it that this Kabbalist is saying that God is internal to Moses? And if he's internal to Moses, do we take it that everything that Moses said on Mount Sinai and afterwards about God giving him instructions came from inside Moses and not from an external God?
Well, that's a great question, and I can't answer it in 1 minute, but the short answer is yes, I think you're correct, Herb. I don't think that they're saying that God is only inside Moses, but I think that they're saying that yes, God is also internal to Moses, and then that means that God is internal to all of us. Right? What is revelation? All this argument between and I will finish in a moment because people already need to leave. What is this whole argument? Is Torah from heaven, or was Torah written by people, by human beings? The answer, according to that tradition, is kind of both, right? The Torah, of course, was written by human beings, but maybe they were inspired by something internal that they saw to be, divine. So yes, the Kabbalists saw all that within themselves, which kind of preceded more modern understandings of spirituality and of psychology and many other things. Okay. Any other last comment?
I was going to say before you mentioned the reaction to philosophy, I saw it as a reaction to Christianity, where there's a real hard split between Satan, God, Jesus, who's all good, they're all dark. And here, there's not a split.
That's fascinating because, and that could be a good segue for next week when Bishop Cara from the Episcopalian denomination comes and talks to us. It'll be interesting to compare and contrast what she will say. Actually, I have no idea what she was going to say, but I hardly had an idea what I was going to say today, but somehow I winged it, right? But I think it's fascinating, and that could very well be those people are sitting in Spain, Christian Spain, Catholic Spain, somewhere in the 13th century, and just as much as they're reacting to philosophy, and there's a lot of academic research of that as well, thank you, David, is that this kind of saying, everything comes from one. Don't talk to us about Satan. Don't talk to us about the evil force. But by the way, you say we're worshiping, right? Or something like that. Yes, everything comes from one source. If you're a true monotheist person, you got to accept it and also accept it and embrace it within yourself. Right? I do, but they don't.
Talk about the one, but at some point in the biblical story, there's multiple gods.
Well, that is a whole other story, and they can't hear, so we can talk about that some other time. Yes, but we'll stay with monotheism right now. Okay, so if you have the pages, the third text that we didn't get to, I was very doubtful that we will, but I put it there anyways. A, because what if you read faster than I thought, I'll be stuck. And B, because you can take it home and read it. That understanding, okay, that started kind of in the Zohar, that the story of the Exodus should be read also in a more complicated and intricate way as, where are we the Egyptians, right? It didn't stop with the Zohar. It continued, from 1,000 years ago, 800 years ago, when it was written, until times of modernity. And it's been elaborated much more, especially in the Hasidic literature. And the Hasidic Rebbes, who were interpreting Kabbalah, all of Hasidut came out of Kabbalah, they gave a lot more depth. There are many more cultural layers. We only kind of learned the first one about how to work with that in practical ways in our lives, how to embrace, learn, deal with the inner serpent, so to speak, the inner Pharaoh, and look at the story of the liberation, the Exodus, not as we are being oppressed, we're the victims, as each and every person can evolve by dealing with the Pharaoh within. And if you'll read that text, which is actually interesting because it's the Chabad Rebbes that it talks about, the ones next door that we don't visit, or some of us maybe do, I don't know. Anyways, I get their magazine to my house, but for some reason they know that I'm Jewish. I don't know how they do that. That my neighbor isn't. I don't know how it works with them. They must be enlightened. But you see, but that if you read that, you will see that there's actually many more layers to the story, and it's just one example. Almost every Hasidic Rebbe, not just Chabad, had teachings about the inner Pharaoh, what it means, what attributes it have, and how to deal with it. Actually, the deep story of the Exodus and liberation, according to these Jewish traditions, is always find the Pharaoh within, and embrace it, deal with it, evolve from it, with it. On the one hand, you can't get rid of it because it's part of you, it's part of God. On the other hand, we still want to continually liberate ourselves from it and make the world and ourselves a slightly better place. All right? So we'll stop here, not because there's not more to say, but because the time has come for us to say Goodbye, and please bring a friend to next week to Bishop Kara. She really is one of the most important religious figures around, and the fact that she agrees to come to Temple Sinai and grace her with an hour of her time means that we should all come and bring a friend to honor her, okay? So, all right, take care, guys. Mazel tov. Don't worry, be happy.
What's that? Oh, yeah, a social action, right? Oh, sorry.
Right, so is that happening in the social hall? It's today, but where is it happening? Oh, very important announcement, guys. I forgot. I was too excited to remind everyone that today at 11, which is in 10 minutes from now, there is a community discussion about the high holidays, what we would like them to look like. As some of you may have heard, the decision has already been made by the board to move our high holiday from the JCC to Temple Sinai this coming season. However, what will be here? How will we pray? What shall we do? What's important? Kids' prayer, teens' prayer. Should we unite the two services? Liturgy, music, food, whatever it is that you might think that high holidays should look like. Don't go home. Grab a bagel and go to the social hall, because there are going to be discussion groups, and the ritual committee of Temple Sinai is going to be leading discussion groups with round tables. And please join us to that activity as well, because we want to hear what you're saying, what you want, what you don't want, what you like, etc. All right, thank you for reminding me. And thank you very much.